Elm Street 85 was a historic faculty residence hall built in the mid-1950s, with wooden beams and brick walls, divided into two floors, each housing 4 apartments. In front of the building stood a grand oak tree that cast a perpetual shadow over the apartments, almost blocking out all sunlight. The first residents of Elm Street 85 were the university's president, department chairs, and secretaries. Over time, as better housing options became available and the building began to show signs of age, the higher-ranking staff moved out, replaced by less prominent faculty and young instructors. Apartment 203 had been vacant since the mid-1960s. Even during the university's housing shortage, no one dared to live there. It was rumored that this one-bedroom, two-living-room apartment was cursed. The original occupant of 203 was a professor named Edwin Howard, who had been a part of the biology department since the building was first occupied. He planted the oak tree in front of the building when he moved in. During the turbulent era that resembled the Vietnam War, Howard, who came from a wealthy landowning family, suffered severe persecution and was on the brink of a mental breakdown. After a particularly brutal public denunciation, where his left eye was blinded by a belt buckle swung by an angry mob, the once fervent academic lost the will to live. The next night, after crawling back home from the hospital, he poisoned the family meal with arsenic he had prepared in advance. His wife, their son, and daughter all perished within minutes. A week later, when the campus guards finally broke into apartment 203, they found the lifeless bodies of the family. The heat had caused gruesome discolorations on the corpses, making the scene utterly horrifying. Edwin Howard's wife and daughter were found slumped over the dining table, while their 22-year-old son, Henry Morgan, was found near the door, his hand reaching out as if trying to escape the apartment. His struggle was evident from the blood trail on the floor. Edwin Howard was found under the north window, a strange smile on his face, blood seeping from his nostrils and mouth, his remaining right eye staring at the oak tree outside. After the police declared it suicide, the bodies were cremated by the university's administration. As time passed, the tragic incident gradually faded from people's memories, overshadowed by the ongoing unrest. In the later years, as the university departments returned to normalcy, the housing allocation team, desperate to solve the housing crisis, reassigned the long-vacant apartment 203 to a young instructor named Daniel Brown. Eager to get married and not heeding the apartment's past, he moved in without a second thought. On their wedding night, strange laughter echoed through the apartment, followed by a woman's wailing and the eerie swaying of the oak tree branches outside the window. The laughter continued, and soon after, Daniel Brown realized the apartment was haunted. He and his wife moved out that very night. However, the tragedy did not end with their departure. 10 months later, Daniel's wife died in childbirth, and the doctors discovered a monstrous stillborn baby with no eyes and a bulging forehead. When a curious doctor cut open the baby's forehead, he found hundreds of eyes inside instead of a brain. The bizarre incident spread like wildfire, and soon after, Daniel Brown transferred to another town, leaving apartment 203 vacant once more. Years passed, and the strange occurrences faded into the background of daily life. The residents of Elm Street came and went, and no other strange incidents were reported. The story of apartment 203 became a tale told to scare children or as a topic of gossip over dinner. Julia Thompson, a 22-year-old office worker, was wrapping up her work early on a Friday afternoon. As her colleagues were still busy, she was already planning her weekend, not thinking much about the concept of mental strength she had read about online. Her focus was on her date for the evening. Julia wasn't conventionally pretty, but her youthful charm made her radiant. She knew she was at the prime of her life and always carried a healthy smile, waiting shyly for love. Suddenly, a chat notification popped up on her computer. The sender had a pirate avatar with a single eye and the name Fading Echoes. "Hi there, beautiful," the message read. Julia didn't remember adding Fading Echoes to her contacts. Curious, she clicked on the profile, which read, "This guy is very mysterious, only left one eye." Fading Echoes. "Your short hair looks great." Julia touched her neat and chic short hair, puzzled how he knew. Fading Echoes? "I know you, but you don't know me." Julia typed back, "Who are you? Where are you? How do you know me?" After a long wait, Fading Echoes sent a chilling message. "I'm right behind you." Feeling a sudden chill, Julia quickly turned around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Her colleagues were engaged in quiet conversations, and everything seemed normal. Fading Echoes. "No need to look back, you won't see me." Annoyed, Julia wondered who was playing this prank. She suspected a new college graduate in the finance department who had shown interest in her. Fading Echoes, shall we meet? Meeting so soon felt unusual, but Julia, suspecting it was someone from her office, agreed with a simple, Sure. 2 hours later, as the evening light faded, the city was enveloped in the warm glow of neon lights. Dressed in a black business suit and carrying a white purse, Julia arrived at the designated meeting spot at City Park. Under a large oak tree, a pale man waved at her. Hello, I'm Fading Echoes. He wasn't a colleague, nor the college graduate she had suspected. In fact, this man was a stranger to her. In his 20s, with strikingly white skin and sharp features, he was handsome and had an air of coldness, almost like a gunslinger from the Old West. You're even more beautiful than I imagined, he said, flashing a smile that revealed a row of white teeth. Julia smiled back, charmingly. You're more handsome than I expected. Really? She nodded. Perhaps such handsome men were rare. His demeanor was not only cool, but also somewhat menacing, possibly indicating a violent past. Julia thought. The evening breeze rustled the oak leaves. She felt a bit disoriented. She was very familiar with the park, often strolling here with friends. But why hadn't she noticed this grand oak before? Looking around, people were coming and going. It wasn't an ideal place for a conversation. She suggested, let's find a place to sit. Redwood Bar. Dim lights, country music, and the scent of whiskey. Julia and Fading Echoes sat facing each other, engaging in casual conversation. Like many online friends meeting for the first time, they talked about the internet and life perspectives, but avoided discussing their personal lives. He was eloquent and witty, his humor often making Julia laugh. It was indeed pleasant to chat with such a man. Julia found the man increasingly likable. She began to fantasize about the day he would pick her up at work, and how her colleagues would look at her with envy. Perhaps this handsome man was her destined Prince Charming. Who knows? When fate arrives, it cannot be stopped. She introduced herself. My name is Julia. What's yours? He smiled again, his white teeth stark against his red lips. I'm Henry. Exchanging names was an important step for netizens preparing for closer contact. Julia was eager to get to know him, attracted by the genuine connection and the romantic atmosphere. Henry. Henry. She repeated his name softly. As their conversation continued, it subtly took on a more intimate tone. They began to talk about their lives, the joys of work, and their families. Henry said, My parents have been gone for a long time. Sometimes I feel like I should do something for my father, to give back what he lost. Julia suddenly asked, How old are you? She was worried she might be older than Henry. Men seem to prefer girls younger than themselves. Henry glanced at her and said, I was born in 43, almost 80 this year. Although the joke was a little strange, Julia laughed happily. How could this young man in his 20s be born so early? She smiled and said, If that's the case, then I was born during the American Revolution, and you should call me Grandma. Henry also smiled and put down his glass. Julia noticed that Henry hadn't had anything to drink all night. The music at Redwood Bar was melodious and lingering. As Julia talked about her home decoration, Henry mentioned that he had a place nearby that a friend had recently renovated, and it looked great. He asked if Julia would like to take a look. Julia checked the time on her phone. It was already past 11. Going to a man's home at this hour would inevitably lead to certain developments. Perhaps Henry would play some melodious and mournful music. Perhaps he would offer her a drink. Perhaps they would kiss after having a drink. And perhaps... She knew as a girl such things were not to be pondered upon. What was there to fear? She had dated 3 boyfriends before, familiar and experienced with many things. She believed she could handle whatever might happen. Besides, this man in front of her is so captivating. Seeing Julia's delighted agreement, Henry took out his thick wallet to pay the bill. On the taxi ride, Julia accidentally touched Henry's hand. His hand was cold and stiff, like a piece of frozen meat from the refrigerator. She looked down and noticed a brown spot the size of a fingernail on the back of his hand. What's this? She asked. Oh, it's just a scar, he replied. Ah, stop scaring people. Julia playfully hit him, going, You're such a tease. The taxi stopped under the large oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street. They got out, walked hand in hand up the long, dimly lit stairs, and entered the eerie apartment 203. The cashier at the Redwood Bar, Carter, was always a very meticulous girl who rarely made mistakes. But at the end of the shift, she was surprised to find a counterfeit currency on the receipt of the day. Strange things did not end there. In the early morning, people exercising were shocked to find a female corpse hanging from the large oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street. After receiving the report from the local police station, the city's criminal investigation team immediately dispatched officers to the scene. Lily had just crawled out of her cozy bed when she received a call from the criminal investigation team asking her to go to the crime scene. She was a young woman who had just graduated from the police academy last year. Although she had not been in this line of work for long, she understood the importance of arriving at the scene quickly. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, and didn't even have time to apply her skincare cream before rushing to 85 Elm Street. Before she got out of the car, she saw a crowd gathered under the large oak tree from a distance. People were talking in an uproar. Several officers from the local police station were maintaining order at the scene. A female corpse was hanging about 4 or 5 meters off the ground from the branches of the oak tree, swaying gently in the wind. A rather terrifying scene. The female corpse was dressed in a black business suit with the left eye brutally gouged out, leaving a bloody hole. From the expression of horror in the girl's wide-open right eye and her open mouth, it was clear that she had suffered immense fear before death. Lily felt a bit nauseous. Although she had seen many corpses, such an expression of horror still made her heart race. Without catching her breath, she and several other detectives who arrived early began the investigation and evidence collection. Strangely, no evidence was left at the scene. The corpse was hung high, and there were no signs of climbing on the oak tree, nor were there any traces of a ladder on the ground. Could the corpse have jumped up there by itself? The autopsy report and the victim's identity investigation came out quickly. The investigation showed that the deceased was named Julia, female, 23 years old, from California, an office worker. She had been working for 2 years with a good employment record and no criminal record. The autopsy report confirmed that the deceased had her left eye gouged out by a thin, sharp tool before she died, and the rest of her body was not injured, nor was there any sexual activity. The cause of death was due to sudden stimulation causing a large amount of adrenaline secretion, leading to rapid heart and lung function failure and sudden death. In layman's terms, she was scared to death. Some onlookers said that apartment 203 at 85 Elm Street was a haunted house, and this woman was strangled to death by a ghost. The criminal investigators, of course, did not believe it. But out of caution, they still got the key from the housing management office of the university and opened the door to apartment 203. Apartment 203 was still empty as before, with thick dust on the floor, and the white plaster on the walls becoming mottled and worn due to the passage of time. The detectives were amazed to find that there was clearly a set of women's high-heeled shoe prints in the dust on the ground, extending inward to the center of the room, and then suddenly disappearing. That is to say, a woman wearing high heels had walked into this house, but when she got to the center of the room, her feet suddenly left the ground, and there were no traces left. Such a strange thing puzzled the detectives. The floor of the room was covered with dust everywhere, and anyone walking anywhere would leave a clear footprint. Did this woman in high heels fly up? The research results of the high-heeled shoe prints were even more astonishing. The footprint matched the foot shape of the female corpse hanging on the oak tree outside the building, which could be determined to be the footprints left by Julia before her death. The windows of apartment 203 had no signs of being opened, and the dust of decades was piled up in the corners of the windows. Probably the windows couldn't be opened anymore. The surrounding residents all said that they did not hear any strange noises last night, and no one saw any unusual phenomena. The police dogs that were called in did not smell any strange odors. Everything was strange and bizarre. No one could explain how the woman named Julia flew from the room to the oak tree outside the building by herself. What exactly was the thin, sharp tool that gouged out her left eye? Was it a person's fingernail? And what exactly scared her to death? On the way back to the criminal police team, the old detective with his bald forehead said to everyone, "It's really strange. Have you guys thought about it? Why there's not a single spider web in that 203 room that has not been lived in for a long time?" This question made everyone shudder. Some things can't be thought about in detail because the more you delve into it, the more inexplicably terrifying it feels. Could it be that there really are some supernatural things in this world? A few months later, something strange happened again. Nami is a sophomore majoring in mechatronics and automation at a university in California. In addition to the dull and tedious mechanical electronics every day, her favorite thing is to chat on the internet. One weekend afternoon, her Facebook suddenly showed the name of Fading Echoes. Nami couldn't remember when she had added this person. When she clicked on the detailed information, there were only a few words on it. "This guy is very mysterious, only left one eye." The strange language immediately attracted Nami's curiosity. After more than 2 hours of chatting, she learned about Fading Echoes' pitiful life story. Both parents died. A younger sister also died many years ago, and he wandered alone in the dim world. The college girl was almost moved, with tears in her eyes. When Fading Echoes proposed to meet, she agreed without hesitation. As the afterglow of the sunset left a dark red in the west, Nami saw Fading Echoes at the school gate. Fading Echoes stood under a large oak tree, with pale skin and a handsome face, and a cold temperament like a gunslinger, enough to make any girl's heart pound. Nami was surprised by his handsome appearance, but also wondered why there was suddenly a large oak tree outside the school gate she was familiar with. They sat down in a refined coffee shop outside the campus. After a brief and polite introduction, they talked about modern literature. Nami said, "My favorite writer is Hemingway. I think his writing is very lifelike. Have you read his The Old Man and the Sea? The life details in it are just like we have all experienced. It's great." She paused and continued, "Oh, that Faulkner is also good. I have read his As I Lay Dying, which is also very good." Fading Echoes looked at the cup in his hand and said, "Writers are actually using paper and words to convey the spirit they have imagined to people. The size and strength of this spirit show the foundation of each writer." Right, Nami said with a silly look in her eyes. "Can the power of spirit really be transmitted? I mean, like telekinesis, can the spirit be transformed into material power?" Fading Echoes smiled and showed 2 rows of white teeth. "Yes, of course it can," he said. "Our thinking is actually a complex spiritual signal, just like electricity, intangible, but containing tremendous energy. These spiritual signals can sometimes be transformed into unbelievable power through some carriers, just like electricity is used to power a motor and become kinetic energy." A few strange remarks made Nami blink her eyes. Fading Echoes continued, "Just like when we look at a painting of tranquil landscapes amidst the hustle and bustle, when you truly grasp the serenity conveyed in the painting, you can escape the noisy reality around you and enter the tranquil spirit the artist intends to express. Why is that? Because the artist is using the medium of canvas and paint to transmit the tranquil spirit they wish to share, altering, covering, or even transforming the noisy spiritual signals you would otherwise feel. The transmission of spirit makes you change your perception of things, makes you confused, makes you lose yourself." "I see," Nami nodded earnestly. The profound Edison in front of her filled her with admiration. She asked foolishly, "Can the power of spirit really be transmitted? I mean, like psychic abilities, can spirit be transformed into material power?" Young people at the turn of the century are always interested in parascientific pursuits. Fading Echo smiled, his teeth prominent against his pale lips. Nami was bewildered. Was this handsome man hinting at something as they talked about emotions? She was no stranger to feelings. Nami's boyfriend was an ordinary guy from her department. Their relationship had been lukewarm and lacked passion for a year. Compared to her boyfriend, the man in front of her was undoubtedly more intriguing. She felt her cheeks grow warm. At 10:40 p.m., the coffee shop owner watched Nami leave with the man. When paying, the man dropped a $100 bill, saying, "Keep the change," inadvertently revealing a brown spot the size of a bottle cap on the back of his hand. Seeing Nami link arms with the man as they left, the coffee shop owner couldn't help but sigh about the prevalence and vulgarity of college girls seeking sugar daddies. It wasn't until the next morning that people saw Nami again. The beautiful college student's body was found hanging from the oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street. Her left eye had been gouged out, leaving a dark, bloody hole staring into the bizarre world. After receiving the report, Detective Lily and several colleagues rushed to the scene. When she saw Nami's body, just like Julia's, swaying from the oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street, Lily couldn't help but cover her mouth, which was agape in shock. Poor Nami had also lost her left eye, with red and white liquid almost filling the bloody hole. The body swayed with the wind. The onlookers around were talking in an uproar. Some said this must be the work of the evil spirit from the haunted 203. The Howard family's spirit has not dissipated for so many years. It's really strange. Others said, "Hey, have you heard about the eyeless freak?" The autopsy report had many similarities with the previous murder case. The victim's left eye was gouged out by a sharp tool similar to fingernails or a blade, and the rest of the body was unharmed. The cause of death was also sudden cardiac failure due to excessive fear. The only difference was that Nami's body had a lot of dust on the chest and abdomen, indicating that the deceased had been dragged on the ground for a while. Lily looked at her colleague, and her colleague was also looking at her. A terrifying atmosphere instantly filled the air, because they all thought of a place, the thickly dusty apartment 203. When they opened the door to apartment 203, as expected, the dusty floor had a long and wide mark. Something had been dragged from the door to the center of the room, and then inexplicably disappeared in the middle of the room. The filth on Nami's body matched exactly with the dust marks on the floor of apartment 203. That is to say, Nami was dragged into apartment 203, lying down. As for how she suddenly left the ground in the room, and how she was hung from the room to the oak tree outside the building, no one knows. The criminal police team looked at each other. From the last murder case of Julia to now, there has been no clue for more than 3 months, and the case can't be solved. Everyone feels bad. The same case happened again in such a short period of time. Lily shook her head helplessly. The branches and leaves of the big oak tree outside the north window were also swaying with the wind. For the same case that happened again and again, the State Department attached great importance to it. According to the instructions of the relevant leaders, the city police department dispatched personnel to organize a special case investigation team directly responsible for the murder case at 85 Elm Street. Lily was very happy to be transferred to this special case team. In addition to the daily subsidy of more than $30, it was the first time after participating in work to participate in such a case that was valued by the state leaders. Soon, the comrades who went to investigate at Nami's school brought exciting results. They found the coffee shop owner who last saw Nami that night in the special case office of the city police department, which was just set up in the warehouse. The coffee shop owner detailed the last time he saw Nami. At that time, she was with a man. The man was about 20 years old, wearing a white shirt and gray-blue trousers, looking quite elegant. Long. He was handsome. Big eyes, white teeth, red lips, but his skin was a bit white, as if there was no blood. Are his teeth very special? Lily, who was responsible for taking the record, couldn't help asking. Because in the case, few people pay attention to other people's teeth. No. The coffee shop owner waved his hand repeatedly. There was nothing special about his teeth. It's just more obvious, especially when he laughs, which caught my attention at a glance. Well, by the way, the man had a brown spot on the back of his hand, the size of a bottle cap. This is an important clue, and the criminal police of the special case team immediately became alert. Someone brought a variety of photos of human spots from the forensic doctor and asked the coffee shop owner to identify them. The coffee shop owner looked for a long time before pointing to a photo and saying, "Ah, right, it's this kind of appearance." On the back of the photo, it says 2 words, necropsy spots. Everyone in the room couldn't help but feel a chill. The coffee shop owner said dejectedly, "This thing is really unlucky. The money I received that day included a note from the underworld. Did I see a ghost? No one knows if there are any ghosts." After a night of meetings and a pile of cigarette butts, the leaders of the special case team finally decided to set up monitoring around 85 Elm Street. In addition to some comrades who were squatting, the rest of the comrades continued to investigate the clues of the suspect with a brown spot on the back of his hand. Soon another month passed. The investigation of the suspect's clues led to no results, and the surveillance of apartment 203 did not find anything unusual. The residents of several households at 85 Elm Street still live a peaceful life. Some couples bicker, some are late for work, some leave early to buy vegetables in the market, and apartment 203 is still empty. No one enters or leaves. Peace made the criminal police hiding around exhausted. However, on the night of September 13th, something strange happened. Tom, male, 23 years old, is a habitual thief. His method of crime is very simple. That is, to stuff the pre-printed false propaganda advertisements into the door cracks one by one, and then Chuck Teasley found the lock core and gently picked it open. Inside apartment 203, it was pitch black, like a gaping maw welcoming his arrival. Tom did not dare to linger, tiptoed inside, and gently closed the door behind him. At 11:58 p.m., the command, "The suspect is in, move," came through the walkie-talkie. The police officers rushed upstairs with the speed of lightning and kicked open the door to apartment 203. Just as the officers broke in, a crack was heard from inside apartment 203, as if something had fallen heavily to the ground. In the chaotic flashlight beams, apartment 203 was still with mottled walls and thick dust. Tom was lying flat in the center of the room, his eyes wide open, his face filled with terror, and his mouth twitching incessantly. He was not dead yet, but it was not much different from being dead. On the way to the hospital, he kept muttering 2 words, "Eyes, eyes, eyes." What eyes? The police officers looked at each other in confusion, a gloomy atmosphere spreading among them. In the middle of the night, Tom died of a heart attack caused by arrhythmia in the hospital bed. The doctors unanimously believed that excessive fear was the real cause of Tom's death. Some police officers were grinding their teeth, some were smoking, and even some were trembling. What exactly did Tom see in apartment 203? What scared him to death in the pitch-black room? What did Tom mean by eyes before he died? And what was the crack sound heard when the police officers rushed in? Everything is inexplicable, and it happened in a bizarre and strange way. Tom was scared to death in front of everyone, dying in a bizarre way. Can it be said that apartment 203 really has a vengeful spirit? The next afternoon, Lily was sitting in front of the computer in the office, starting to type the report of last night's operation. Faced with the inexplicable and bizarre situation, she really couldn't continue writing. All evidence indicated that the investigation of this case was not dealing with people, but with ghosts. What should she write? If she wrote that the task force had seen a ghost, the State Department leaders would not be satisfied. She poured a cup of tea, holding the slightly hot teacup hesitatingly. Fortunately, the report is not due until tomorrow, and there's plenty of time to catch up. So she simply opened the internet, logged into Facebook, and relaxed online. After watching the stock market news for a while, her Facebook started to jump. The consumer was a one-eyed pirate avatar called Fading Echoes. Hi, hello, hello, Lily typed on the keyboard. Fading Echoes was in her friend list, but she couldn't remember when she had added this person. Can we chat? Why should I chat with you? Lily has always been arrogant on the internet. The other party was silent for a while, then sent a sentence. You can't write your report, you need to take a break. Maybe chatting is a good choice. How did he know about the report? Lily covered her mouth in surprise. Could it be someone she knew playing a prank? She clicked on Fading Echo's profile, and there was only one sentence. This guy is very mysterious, only left one eye. Seeing the word I, Lily shuddered. She immediately thought of the two words the deceased thief Tom kept muttering before he died. Eyes. The most fragile organs of the human body can always bring the deepest fear to humans. Lily typed on the keyboard. What are you keeping the eye for? To pay a debt. To whom do you owe the debt? To my father. It's just strange. Why do you have to give him an eye? Because his eyes were gouged out. I was there at the time, but I couldn't stop it. So I was an accomplice. Didn't you call the police? As a police officer, Lily believes that the public security organs can uphold justice. The other party was silent. After a long time, a line of words came through. Sometimes no one can uphold justice. Lily had studied psychology at the police academy, and she could guess that the person sitting behind the long internet wire should be someone who has experienced pain and is pessimistic and disappointed. Most women are kind-hearted. For every pessimistic and disappointed person, they will bring a compassionate mood and want to help others. Lily is no exception. Although she is a police officer, she is more of a kind woman. She typed, I am a police officer. Maybe I can help you uphold justice. We are not from the same era. You can't uphold the justice that is past. Am I very old? I think we are all young. Lily wanted to make the topic lighter. We meet while we are still young. The other party's attitude towards the proposal was very firm. Lily guessed that it must be a colleague joking with her. Otherwise, how could they propose to meet so quickly? She thought carefully maybe there's someone who has a crush on her trying to date her. Maybe there's a real Prince Charming waiting at the other end. Go, I'm such a big person. Can you still eat me? Thinking of this, Lily typed two neat words on Facebook. Agree. Midnight horror. Every day there will be nightfall, just as every day there will be death. Optimistic people say, after every night there will be dawn. Pessimistic people say, after day, there will be one night after another. At the busy intersection, Lily met Fading Echoes. He stood under a tall oak tree, handsome and elegant, his white shirt reflecting the neon lights of the city. Lily said, I didn't expect you to be so handsome. Her praise was sincere. I was ugly an hour ago, but I can change. He smiled, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. They sat down in a fast food restaurant. Lily hadn't eaten anything since the afternoon, so she ordered fried chicken wings, a veggie burger, and a large drink. Fading Echoes didn't eat anything. Are you going to eat something? Lily asked. No, thank you. Haven't you heard of the saying, a beautiful woman can feed you? Looking at your beauty, I've long forgotten about hunger. This guy still has a sweet mouth. Lily was a bit embarrassed instead. She rarely met netizens, or rather, she was disdainful of meeting netizens. In the police academy, she had accompanied a roommate to meet a dinosaur. It was a real dinosaur with colorful clothes and an astonishing appearance, which left an indelible shadow in Lily's heart. Today, she thought it was a colleague secretly asking her out, but she didn't expect the other party to be a handsome and young man. An unexpected mood ignited a colorful dream in her heart. When she was in the police academy, she had also had a boyfriend. Unfortunately, they were quickly separated after being assigned to 2 different places for work. Human emotions are always as changeable as clouds. For Lily, emotions need to be followed. Today's special encounter, it's hard to say it's not the arrangement of fate. After a conversation, Lily had an irresistible affection for the man in front of her. In her impression, men usually speak rudely and casually. But this man named Fading Echoes is not only elegant and eloquent, but also very considerate. He seems to know what you are thinking, and he also seems to know what you want to hear. His every word and deed seems to reflect a kind of romance arranged by God. So Lily quickly felt drunk, intoxicated, anesthetized. Or is it bewitched? She asked for his name. She needed a real name to enrich her dream. My name is Henry, he said, his white teeth always very conspicuous. The clock pointed to 11 o'clock. The fast food restaurant was about to close. Henry said, my home is nearby. Let's go there and sit for a while. but it's too late. It's not very convenient. Lily really didn't want to end such a beautiful night so quickly. What are you afraid of? I won't eat you. Am I afraid? Lily said with a smile. I'm a police officer. What am I afraid of? Aren't you afraid of ghosts? Ghosts? The strangeness of 85 Elm Street flashed through Lily's mind for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by the smile of Henry in front of her. She said, there are no ghosts in the world. Even if there are, I would tell it, hey, I'm a cop. Put your hands behind your head and lie on the floor. Henry laughed helplessly on his pale face. After leaving the fast food restaurant, Henry reached out to hail a taxi. But Lily said, where is your home? I have a monthly pass. Let's take the bus instead. She liked to make men feel that she was economical. Henry did not object. At 11:30, they got on the last bus of Route 34. There were not many passengers on the bus. Everyone was tired after a day's work, and some were dozing off in their seats. The city at night was peaceful and quiet. The driver and the conductor were whispering something, and the faint whispering was slowly coming like drowsiness. In the flickering lights, Lily and Henry looked at each other tenderly. Who can say what? Who can say nothing? What? A woman always indulges in reverie when necessary? The bus stopped at an intermediate station. Some people got on, and some got off. Suddenly, an old man who had been sitting in the back row rushed over and grabbed Lily's hand, saying, Alice, I've been looking for you. Your mother is sick. Come with me to the hospital quickly. Alice. Lily had never heard this name before, and the sudden incident left her confused. The old man looked very anxious. He kept shouting, get off the bus quickly. Let's take a taxi to the hospital, while secretly winking at Lily. Beside her, Henry was expressionless. Lily was even more confused. Her head felt a bit groggy. Could her mother really be sick? But who is this old man? Could this old man be mentally ill? At this time, Henry slowly reached out to push the old man, but the old man nimbly dodged. In an instant of this series of actions, Lily seemed to see something and seemed to see nothing. She was pulled off the bus by the old man, confused and muddled. Henry did not get off the bus. He was on the bus, expressionless. In the tug of war between Lily and the old man, this last bus of Route 34 drove away with Henry's expressionless face disappearing into the darkness at the end of the road. Lily was very angry. She pushed away the strange old man and loudly scolded him, asking him what was going on. The old man settled his mind and said, Girl, I just saved your life. Huh. Lily was even more confused. Girl, I have something to tell you. Don't be scared, the old man said seriously. What? Did you notice that the man who was with you just now never touched the ground with his feet? The night around was tranquil, the city's usual hum carrying on under the same yellow streetlights and against the backdrop of dark buildings. But Lily was anything but calm. The idea of someone floating, not touching the ground, was an impossibility in the world as she knew it. What did it mean if Henry wasn't human? She racked her brain, trying to recall every detail of her time with Henry, searching for a logical explanation amidst the chaos of her thoughts. But all she could recall was his paleness and a set of teeth that seemed always ready to smile. Then, something even more horrifying occurred to her, sending a shiver down her spine. When the old man had pulled her off the bus and Henry had reached out to push him, in that brief moment, Lily had noticed a small brown spot on the back of Henry's hand, a necropsy spot. In the turmoil, she hadn't given it much thought, but now the memory came back to her, and with it, a cold sweat trickled down her back. Thank you, Lily managed to say to the old man before her fear overtook her, and she began to cry. She was terrified. Tears are a girl's refuge in the face of fear. But Lily was more than just a frightened girl. She was a police officer, well versed in the protocols of justice. The bus number 43 passed by 85 Elm Street. Acting on professional instinct, she realized that Henry bore a striking resemblance to the suspect in the two previous murders at 85 Elm Street. Whether he was a person or a ghost, this was a significant lead. She asked the old man to return to the police station with her to make a statement. His testimony would lend credence to her otherwise unbelievable story. 35 minutes later, they arrived at the city's criminal investigation department via taxi. The officers on duty had laughed at Lily's breathless and excited account. The story was too bizarre, and no one took it seriously. They joked with Lily, teasing her about meeting strangers online and suggesting she watch fewer horror films. No one believed her, and Lily was frustrated, shaking her head in disbelief. Then the phone rang. It was a call from the traffic police team reporting that the last bus of Route 34 had been in an accident. The laughter stopped. A wave of genuine dread washed over everyone. It was the same bus that Lily had just been on, the one Henry was on when it overturned, and there were no survivors. When the criminal police arrived at the scene, the bodies of several passengers and the driver had been pulled from the ditch and lay straight on the side of the road. Each body, aside from being bruised and soaked, had a look of terror, eyes wide, mouths half open, as if they had witnessed something unspeakably horrifying. The flashing lights of the police cars cast a red glow on the faces of the deceased, adding an eerie intensity to the scene. The forensic report indicated that the driver, conductor, and passengers, a total of 7 people, did not die from the impact of the bus crashing into the ditch. Their actual cause of death was a cardiac arrest due to extreme fear. All 7 had been scared to death, but what could have possibly terrified them so much? In the criminal investigation team, Lily and her colleagues were taking a statement from the old man who had pulled her off the bus. The old man's name was John, a retired worker from a biological research institute. The atmosphere was tense and solemn as everyone listened intently. An officer asked John, after they got on the bus, how did you notice that Henry's feet didn't touch the ground? I happened to be sitting at the back of the bus, and I saw it as soon as they boarded. Lily asked, why didn't you tell me right away? It wasn't possible. At that time, I didn't know if he intended to harm you. Another officer inquired, how did you know Henry wanted to harm Lily? Because at that moment, one of his hands was stealthily making a digging motion under the seat. Digging for what? Digging for eyes? The thought of the gouged out eyes from the previous cases made Lily scream in horror. The old man calmly said, don't be afraid, girl. Everyone encounters a few strange things in life. You see, I'm over 80 years old this year. At my age, you'll find that the world around you isn't quite the same as when you were young. Perhaps when we were young, we were too impatient, overlooking many things that seem not to exist. As we age, we might discover that the world isn't exactly the same as it was in our youth. John smiled kindly and continued, I've been a biologist. I've spent most of my life in life sciences, but the more I learn, the more puzzled I become. Especially in the realm of spiritual energy, there's much we can't explain now, but not everything. Our research in this area has only just begun. For instance, the person we saw today might be spiritual energy that was retained before death and then released afterward. His actions are not conscious but instinctual, leading him to perform many supernatural deeds. In reality, these actions reflect what he wanted to do when he was alive. Thus, he's merely a person, a vessel for human thoughts. There's nothing inherently strange about it. Lily and her colleagues looked at each other, finding it hard to believe. The old man continued, it's possible that this individual suffered greatly before his death, which led to a vengeful mindset, hence his harmful actions now. Ancient texts mention fierce spirits, likely a similar phenomenon. Of course, this is just a hypothesis. We can't confirm it yet. Our research on this kind of reflexive energy transfer is still in its early stages. He paused for a moment and said, by the way, there was a biologist named Edwin Howard at the Normal College who had conducted extensive research on this. He was also the head of our Life Energy Measurement Project team at that time. Unfortunately, during the Vietnam War, well, those are all matters of the past. I was still young back then, but now I'm retired. The old man inquired further, has he passed away now? There was a mix of respect and a sense of awaiting death in his expression, common among the elderly. Thus, John's face was solemn. Detective Old Yang suddenly asked, what exactly is that entity? Is it a person or a corpse? His silence had been so long that his question startled everyone. It would be a corpse. That is, there must be a corpse with energy transfer. If we can find that corpse with the energy transfer, we can prevent it from harming people again. Is this the best conclusion for the Nanping series of murder cases? Can this unfinished theory be used as a basis? Some believe it, others don't. At least Lily believes it because she has seen Henry with her own eyes. And from a woman's intuition, she believes they will meet again. After a night of discussion with no practical outcome except for a few cigarette butts in the ashtray as dawn broke, the sky was overcast and dim. It was another cloudy day. Driven by curiosity and fear, or perhaps some inexplicable feminine sentiment, Lily approached the mysterious large oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street. Perhaps this tree had some connection with Henry. The oak tree's branches and leaves were lush, rustling in the breeze. Had it not been for the old man's rescue last night, Lily might be hanging from that tree at this moment. A white wire passing through the oak tree's branches and leaves caught her attention. This wire was used to connect the network of a nearby internet cafe. Lily's heart tightened. Could it be that Henry was operating his fading echoes on the internet through this line? She quickly returned to the criminal police team's office and powered on the computer. In her Facebook friend list, she couldn't find the name Fading Echoes. She searched but still found nothing. No one had registered this name yet. Soon, the comrade responsible for investigating the name Henry sent shocking news. Henry, Male, born in 1943, was admitted to Harvard University with excellent results after graduating from high school, but was later persuaded to drop out of SUL due to political reasons, and has been unemployed at home since. He had always lived in room 203, 85 Elm Street. In 1965, his father Edwin Howard suffered a mental breakdown due to long-term torture by the authorities, leading him to poison the family meal, resulting in the collective death of 4 people in the family. Henry died at the age of 22. The archives and photos of the Howard family were mostly lost during the turbulent times of the Vietnam War, and only the group photo of Edwin Howard with the 1962 graduates of the Normal College remained. Holding this enlarged black and white photo, a sense of dread slowly rose in Lily's heart. The people in the photo, dressed in the darkest attire of that time, wore amiable smiles, akin to a photo on a tombstone, capturing expressions that people feared to forget many years later. The dark clothes were pieced together like a thick, dark cloud, with Edwin Howard standing among them, smiling selflessly and confidently. He bore a slight resemblance to Henry, and father and son shared the same deep, large eyes. Where was Henry's body? Was Henry truly a transmission of his father's spirit? If Henry was indeed a transmission of spirit, then why was he killing one after another? 2 girls had their left eyes gouged out and were hung on the large oak tree in front of 85 Elm Street. Was there some unknown secret within this tree? Perhaps the deceased merely felt inexplicable loneliness, and even Henry was angry about his own death. He seeks revenge. The one who killed him was his father and the cruel spirit of that era. He died, but his vengeful spirit remained, harming society. Can this be explained? In the investigation of Henry's family, another strange thing was found. This matter may be more bizarre and terrifying than any elf or ghost. Because in the morgue of a hospital, a body that had been sealed for nearly 36 years was discovered. Perhaps due to the negligence of the management personnel, perhaps because of the omissions in the registration book during the Vietnam War, or perhaps because of some inexplicable force, this body had lain in the morgue's ice cabinet for so many years, with no one ever inquiring or taking care of it. It was only recently, as the hospital was reformed into an enterprise, that it was found. Having been stored in the cold cabinet for many years, the body's muscles had atrophied, and many large and small necropsy spots had developed on it. After confirmation, this body was the Henry who was poisoned to death by arsenic. To further ascertain whether this Henry was the same one Lily had seen that night, Lily was invited to make an identification. To be honest, as a criminal police officer for over a year, Lily had seen many bodies, some with heads blown apart by guns, others with limbs torn off, and some who died from fright after having their eyes gouged out. But this time, the thought of identifying the Henry she had spoken to, now a body that had been stored for more than 30 years, sent chills tightly winding around her heart. The light in the morgue was dim and gloomy. The several male police officers accompanying her made a snap-snap sound on the floor with their leather shoes. The morgue always seemed to lack windows, with a stuffy atmosphere to smell medicine and a 15-watt light bulb, creating an eerie atmosphere at the boundary of life and death in the quiet surroundings. The heavy ice cabinet was gently pulled open by the hospital staff, revealing a slightly desiccated corpse. The corpse's face was pale, its eyes tightly shut, and its upper and lower lips had shrunk due to the long storage time, revealing a row of white teeth. Ah, Lily covered her mouth with her hand. It was this person, the one who called himself Fading Echoes, the handsome corpse that had sat in the fast food restaurant chatting with her just a few days ago. Lily couldn't catch her breath. She turned her head to look at the corpse's arm, where the withered muscles tightly wrapped the stiff skeleton, and the brown, slightly mildewed necropsy spots were still vividly there. Lily tried to control her emotions and nodded to the accompanying police officers. The police officers couldn't believe such a strange thing in the world, and no one spoke, just looked at each other, exchanging their surprised attitudes with their eyes. Just as the male police officers exchanged glances, Lily clearly saw that the dried upper and lower lips of the corpse slightly moved. Henry smiled. This slight movement was unnoticed by anyone else. When the male police officers looked back at the corpse's face, the smile had disappeared, and the withered cyan muscles returned to their original appearance. Lily's first reaction was that he smiled. When she suddenly realized that the corpse in front of her really smiled, she could no longer control her emotions, overwhelmed by terror, and screamed. Who has seen a corpse smile by itself? With necropsy spots, shrunken muscles, it was a lump of dead meat. Henry smiled in an instant. The sudden psychological stimulus immediately broke through the limit that Lily's nerves could bear. She ran, screaming and rolling out. To be precise, from then on, as long as someone showed a smile in front of her, she would scream and scare to death, because any kind of smile would remind her of Henry. In fact, there is a more terrifying thing that Lily did not see. That is, in Henry's dried mouth, there are still two soft human eyeballs.